Greetings once again. It's Samuel Mugodi, the founder and president of the Visionaries Association, here today for another episode of our podcast. Today we have a really special guest. We're honored to have her with us, Mrs. Rebecca Ziegler-Mano. So I'm going to give a brief background because we're in the atmosphere of greatness. In 2000, Rebecca Ziegler-Mano took a job at the U.S. Embassy in Harare, Zimbabwe, helping young people who wanted to go to college in the United States. They weren't necessarily the top students, she noticed. They simply were the ones who had the money for college. Ziegler-Mano couldn't help but wonder about the talented youth in Zimbabwe's poorer communities, students for whom a college education would be life-changing. Ziegler-Mano has since spent 25 years identifying the brightest, most impoverished students in Zimbabwe and enabling them to study abroad. The United Student Achievers Program, which I am proud to be a part of today, which she founded, coaches students through the admissions process, helps secure financial aid, and eases their transition to college life. More than 500 USAP students have graduated from Duke, MIT, Stanford, and other schools in the United States and other countries. They have returned to Zimbabwe as software engineers, microfinance bankers, agronomists, and structural engineers, to name just a few professions, with the goal of helping further their country's growth. In 2016, Ziegler-Mano expanded USAP into a broader non-profit called Education Matters, and in 2020 she opened a residential school, recruiting talented 11th and 12th graders from throughout the country, including from a refugee camp, and offering them a pre-college curriculum. These kids are so driven and so motivated, Ziegler-Mano says, adding that families in Zimbabwe place a high value on education. Parents will sell their last cow if it means their kids go to a better school, she said. Ziegler-Mano, who will receive the GSE's 2021 Alumni Excellence in Education Award at a ceremony on October 24, is already hearing from educators in other countries who want to visit the new school, and she's eager to share what she's learned. She says, "I really want to capture the vision so other people can use it." Welcome.
Thank you.
Mai Mano.
Thank you for that long introduction. Thank you so much, Samuel. It's lovely to be here.
The whole organization, we are quite honored to have you with us today. As you know, we hope to inspire young people to pursue their dreams, to pursue their identities, and we believe that they can be these great persons just if they are able to notice that potential within them and to start working on it. So this series is just meant to give an example of people who have done that, and I don't think there's a better example than yourself. You love to teach, you love education, and you found a way to integrate that into your life in such a way that you are fulfilled and at the same time making ends meet. So could you just tell us, how that journey has been like, to discovering what you really want to do, to deciding how you're going to do it, and to this point that you are now helping so many people? And
Thank you. That's a very big question. And I think it all starts with realizing that I think every family has a dream for their child, and that is to live a life better than the one they're living. And every child has a dream too. And often we think dreams are for the rich, but dreams are for everybody. So I think my journey actually started when I first came to Zimbabwe. I taught in Chirumanzu at a school called Chengwena Secondary School, a upper top government school about 80 kilometers from the Mashingo Road. And I realized there was brilliance there, but very undiscovered. And the expectations people had were to finish O-level and get married and start farming and maybe become a bus driver or maybe work at a clinic or something. So I started realizing that it is really a shame and a lack of development in Zimbabwe, in the world, when a young person does not pursue their dream, when they give up on their passions at a very young age and say, that's not for me, that's for those people over there. So I think my life's work has been how can we help? You cannot help everyone, but how can we help students who are very driven to follow those dreams? How can we help people follow their dreams? And I think it's something a lot of people can do better, is to encourage people. Encourage people to look farther, to look deeper, to work harder, to take risks, positive risks that will allow them to follow. So I feel like the kind of work I love to do with USAP is the same kind of work you're trying to do with your podcast here. Yeah.
That is very flattering. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's very true how expectations can mold the person that we decide to become when we grow up because of these expectations. So I think it's very important, like, for people to find that authenticity and sort of take positive risks towards things that are generally beyond what people expect of them. And I think, like, that's the problem that we have as young people in Zimbabwe. We have ideas, we have these creative ideas, we have these creative capabilities. But for example, when maybe you're somewhere from Gokwe, right, and you have an idea to do something, to start a program, maybe start your own organization and stuff like that. But then it's because you are in this place and you feel like, well, considering where I'm from, considering the thing, like, the status that I have, maybe you're not, that rich. Obviously, you're not that. Yeah, and you. I think we take the right first step, which is when you want to do something, you have to to consider your situation, see where you're at, and if you can do that. But then usually when we realize we don't have much resources to do anything, we just, so that fire slowly dies. So how do you think, like, we can overcome that as young people? How do you think we can be able to look into the future and see this beautiful thing, and it captivates us so much that we don't really we care, but not enough to stop about the problems? Yeah, so how do you think we can do that, especially with the situation here in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, I think one mistake that a lot of young Zimbabweans in general have made is that idea, that saying that the grass is greener on the other side. So people just start orienting that success equals leaving, and not success equals watering the flower in your own garden, but success means going to someone else's garden. And it's bleak out there in the diaspora. If you start talking to people who have left, it's not always rosy. People are far from home. They're far from the people they love. They're in cold weather. They're not being paid well for the hard work they do. So it's not always the answer. I think the research has shown that the best way for a young person to focus on their future is to have at least one caring adult in their life. That when somebody feels like someone really cares what happens to them, they're motivated then to work harder. And that person can sometimes be a parent, it sometimes can be a teacher, it sometimes can be a pastor. But when someone feels like there's a caring adult who will actually listen to me and not tell me my ideas are crazy, that helps so much. So I encourage young people, if you don't have that caring adult in your life, find that caring adult and cultivate that relationship. Everyone needs a mentor. I have a mentor. It's been my mentor since I started USAP 25 years ago. I still call that person maybe on a monthly basis to get advice. You need that person in your life. So that's one thing I would say. And the other would be that sometimes you have to quiet the voices that are around you in your head and listen to your own voice, right? If your own voice is telling you that you have a dream to do something, but everyone around you is telling you something else, sometimes it's very difficult, but you have to quiet those voices. I think Samuel knows that in class, it's one of the first things we do here is to say, okay, what does everyone in your family expect you to do? And it's usually become a doctor because you're a bright student. And then you say, do you want to be a doctor? And then people say, actually, I never thought about it because I just was told that's what I'm going to do. And then they stop and think, actually, I want to be a famous singer. Actually, I want to be a filmmaker. Actually, I want to work on public health. Actually, I want to become a scientist. Actually, I want to be a pilot. And people have a lot of different dreams. So you need to really have a conversation with yourself and say, what wakes you up every morning? What are you excited about? What are you passionate about? And then how can you be practical about it in terms of what you need to do to get there? So you can't dream of becoming an engineer if you're failing math, right? You need to start with where are you right now? What can you do today? What you can do today as a young person is go to school, do your best at school. And what you can also do is seek out those opportunities, no matter how small they become. Don't just be the person who does the least and waste their time on, WhatsApp and sleeping and this podcast is a great example. Find things that are motivational, that feed your soul and that feed your passion, and do what you can, no matter whether you're in Gokwe or Chipinge or Zaka or Muzarabani. You can find things through churches, through communities, through books, through caring adults, through school. You can find things to do that help you grow, right? The last thing I'll say is I think our education system in this country is very exam driven. We know it's very exam driven, and it teaches people to be narrow-minded. It just teaches people to study, to take exams and pass their exams. But it doesn't teach you to prepare you for life. It doesn't teach you how to solve big problems. So it means you need to seek that out in other ways. How are you learning to become a critical thinker? How are you reading widely so that you learn more than one perspective on an issue? That's really important too.
I think it's very interesting. Like in the beginning, you spoke about finding that person who really cares about what you become and you working hard, and who cares to listen and a lot of stuff like that. I think like that's what we are trying to build at the Visionaries Association. We're saying we want it to be a place where people with visions can come and listen to each other and associate with each other in a way that drives their visions forward. And also I like the fact that you said do something wherever you are, right? And also be practical about where you want to go and the dreams that you have, right? And also the education system in Zimbabwe, right? It being like that, right? What's really like the approach that you can take as a student, even though it's exam driven, right? I believe maybe if you before I okay, like I have this philosophy. I try to study to learn. I try to sometimes forget about the exam, just study to learn and understand what I'm learning and try to apply that to to day-to-day living, so that it sinks into my head. So what's your encouragement, Les, for people who are still within that system, right? How can they find ways to learn in a way that they can apply it to their lives? And also the issue about the diaspora, like we need to build resilience in ourselves to believe that the problems that we're facing as a nation, we can solve them as a nation. But of course that takes a long time, and because it takes such a long time, it's a bit difficult for people to see that, right? So how do you shift your point of view, so to speak, such that you can see things in a more positive way?
So there's a lot in one place. I hope I can remember this all. So I think for the last thing you said, how do you look at things in a more positive light? It's really interesting when a tourist or a visitor comes to Zimbabwe, because they just say you have the most beautiful country in the world. Like, oh my gosh, there were just visitors here at school today saying, wow, look at this Miombo woodland, look at your balancing rocks, look at your trees, look at the monkeys, look at that, and we take it for granted. We just live here, but we live in a beautiful country that has so many assets. We have mineral resources, we have beautiful waterfalls and mountains, and we have a rich heritage of agriculture. We have fresh food that we eat every day. I think, yes, Zimbabwe has its issues, a lot of them, but we also forget all of the assets we have and the beauty that's here. People have time for each other here. A lot of countries, people have no time for each other. People don't greet each other. My favorite statement by somebody who studied abroad in the UK and the US and decided to come home when everyone said, "Why did you come home?" She said, "I like to talk to the person I buy tomatoes from." Right? I want to have human connection. Yeah. So I think we have to remember that. I think for the advice, the other part of your question was, what advice do you give someone in the ZIMSEC system, in the local system? Just like you said, you kind of answered it. You need to learn for learning, not for passing the exam. That the worst statement you can ever tell one of your teachers, the worst question you can ever ask is this in the syllabus? Because it shows that you're more interested in exams than the ideas. You need to be someone who's chasing ideas and also to be trying to go beyond the syllabus. How would I apply this? It's nice to learn physics, but why am I learning physics or chemistry? How could I apply this to solve a problem? Right? I think there's a famous example of a boy in Malawi, in a rural area of Malawi, who is studying physics and took his physics to build a windmill in his village to create, to be able to create power for his village. And so I think that's a perfect example of somebody taking his classroom. He was in a just government school and saying, "Oh, this principle I learned in physics, I think I could use it to build a windmill because then we could have a light in my house." And he built this windmill out of old bicycle parts and parts he found in the village in order to generate lights for his own house. That's the kind of visionary someone needs to be. Like, you need to think, what am I learning and how do I apply it? But also, I think in this day and age where a lot of people have phones and have WhatsApp and things, you can get a lot of access to information that's beyond your syllabus. People will send you a PDF of a great novel and you can read that novel on your own on your phone. So gone are the days where you had to have a lot of money to buy a paper book in a big city. Now, yes, you have to be able to buy data here and there, but you can actually have access to a lot of information, and the key is to make sure you're getting useful information. There's a lot of junk also. Yeah. Don't spend your time on the junk scrolling through worthless videos on TikTok. Like, find the information that will really open your mind and teach you new things. And then finally, find your fellow travelers. In other words, that's the visionaries you're talking about. Find that kid in your class who also, like you, is really motivated. And then maybe together you find an opportunity like the Zimbabwe Science Fair or something, and you decide to apply. No one says that it's only restricted to certain schools, and they have scholarships to pay the registration. So find something that you feel like you can band with a few other people and you can do together wherever you are. You don't have to do this alone.
I think, the point you stress a lot is look for those opportunities, and when you know where you're going, you know which opportunities to look for. Yeah. And that drive. And you also spoke about how you can have access to other sources of information, other sources, and I think that sort of redefines the whole idea of education. It doesn't just have to be mainstream. What are you getting at school and stuff like that? Find other ways to also educate yourself. Yeah. So most people, of course, they may be gifted intellectually, academically and stuff like that. Of course, nobody is what about, there's cases where maybe what you are really good at, right? Maybe you are really good at soccer, and you have trouble in the class. Maybe you are really good at drawing. You have trouble in the class too, but then out there in the general system, it's hard really to pick that up, lift people like that up, right? So what would you encourage them to them be like, work hard, like, a hard hitter, or maybe how do you go about that? Because I feel like that's the thing. A lot of us talented and gifted in many ways, but because the expectations are so narrow and limited, it sort of forces us into this fine tube and limits us. So how do you circumvent that and still become the person you want to become?
So this is where you have to have a dose of realism, and you have to not give up on your talent. The way education is structured in Zimbabwe, it's very hard for you to go further with any talent, athletic, artistic, musical, if you don't have O level. After O level, then it's a little bit more, you can go in different directions. But if you don't get those 5 O levels with math and English, as you know, so many opportunities are closed to you. So I would say you need to push to get through your O levels. You really do. But beyond that, you need to push with where your talent is. If it's sciences, you push into your sciences. If you're a talented writer, you do your arts and you do A level. But then some people from that side, you can apply for sports scholarships. You can apply for sports academies and stuff with your O level to go on. You can apply for artistic programs at the Polytechnic, architecture programs, art programs, and all of that with your O level. But you can't go on in those different fields. If you look at our famous artists in Zimbabwe, none of them have university degrees. That's not the direction they went. So if you look at our famous Shona sculptors, if you look at our famous artists who are in the national galleries and stuff, but they do have O level. So I think that's where you have to realize you're not going to be, it's going to be really, really challenging for anyone to pursue a talent with a Form 1 education, right? Once you get through your O level, though, there are opportunities. You can't be just good like, oh, I'm good on my, I like to draw cartoons, or I like to play on my netball team. You have to be that good if you're gonna follow an arts or a sports path for you to end up getting paid. You really have to be that person where people feel like you can do this at the national level. But I will tell you right now, there are a dozen athletes in the United States who are on college, more than a dozen, but a dozen who are like winning nationally in the US who come from Zimbabwe. And most of them have an O level education from here. And then they were able to get picked up because of their times, and they're making it to the national team, and then they get picked up and go places. So that is definitely possible. But I also feel like life should not be linear. You should not just be doing one thing. You can be an amazing artist and also be a chemist, right? So you shouldn't let your music, your arts die just because you've decided you're taking an academic route. It's really important to have a well-rounded life. You shouldn't stop playing football or supporting Arsenal just because you're good at math, right? So it is very possible to combine these things. But I definitely think when you're in a difficult financial situation, education is always going to be your best bet. And even if you don't see yourself as academically gifted, quote unquote, hard work goes a lot farther than those gifts. You just have to apply yourself.
I think that's very profound. It's something I'd always been thinking about, and I'd never really come to that answer. And I think that's beautiful. That like you said, a dose of realism, and I think that's really important for all of us. So you come from America, right? Why Zimbabwe? Because if we look at it, maybe it would have been easier maybe to set this up, the school and this organization, probably maybe in South Africa, because maybe the opportunities there are easier, and then you could have come and gotten Zimbabwean kids or something like that. So why did you choose this place? What drew you to love it so much? So much that you stayed.
Yeah, Zimbabwe is a beautiful country with beautiful people who have a very, very high level of human capacity. I feel like people here are really smart and really capable and really talented, and so it was like a no-brainer for me. Also, my husband's Zimbabwean, so I first came here, but then I met him in graduate school. And when we decided to come back, we were only going to stay for 2 years, and that was 25 years ago. But I love this country, and I feel like, as troubled as it is, the only solution is to educate young people who are in touch with the realities of their communities, not necessarily wealthy young people, but people who are really in touch. The reason I like to send people abroad is not for them to go abroad forever. It's to get exposure to different ideas, different ways of doing things, different ways of the way not to just emulate it for Zimbabwe, but to see what about Zimbabwe do we love and we want to keep, and what about other places do we want to learn from, and then come back and apply that here. That's the win-win solution. That's what I did, right? I came here, I went to the US again for grad school, I learned, then I brought back what I learned here. Um, I really hope a lot of your young visionaries will do the same, whether they leave the country by internet or they leave the country physically, doesn't really matter. But to go and gain new ideas and then see how you can apply them in your own communities to improve your place. Like Gokwe, we don't know, could become 100% solar in 10 years, could become the birthplace of a certain industry in Zimbabwe. There's nothing that's limiting everything to be in Harare and Bulawayo. In fact, I feel like it's easier to make change in a small place. So I encourage all of you to think about what's your place in that future.
Speaking of Gogo, I actually, envision Gogo becoming the economic capital of Zimbabwe. It's in the Midlands. We have a bit of coal somewhere. We farm cotton. We can. Thank you so much, Mai Mano, for gracing us with your presence today, and sharing your story and putting your voice in there, and inspiring us. Dear visionaries, we believe in you. Mai Mano believes in you. I believe in you, and we are here to support you in your journey to success. Thank you for listening. See you next time.